The problem with that is what you just said. There's no assessment of the situation. Nobody knows what's going on. Because let's be honest, no matter what, how many laws you pass, criminals will always break them. That's why they're called criminals.
Yeah, no one talks about all the kids in the foster system. Why are we not focusing on that? Why are we not giving them a better chance at succeeding at life when they're already in this world and struggling?
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of All Things Everyday, where we work on bringing back the art that is the everyday conversation. I am your host, Albert, joined by my wonderful co-host, Aditi Galande. What's going on?
What's up, everybody?
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. A little monsoons here, a little rains.
Yes, we definitely do need it here in Arizona.
Yes. You know what else is raining down? Some shitstorm headlines. We got another episode of Show and Tell today. Guys, for people that don't know, this is the segment of our show where we just find some articles of current events and we talk about it one-on-one. Neither one of us knows what article we're bringing to the table, so this is the first time each of us hears about it. And we just kind of spew it out, round table it, see what our thoughts are, and be more informed. Just talk about what's going on in everyday society.
Be educated.
Exactly.
Be woke.
All right, here's what I got for you.
Okay, hit me.
Schools are spending billions on high-tech defense for mass shootings. Safety anxieties are helping fuel a multi-billion-dollar industry of school security products. Some manufacturers sell gun detection scanners and wireless panic buttons for school districts. Others offer high-resolution cameras and software that can identify students' faces, track their locations, and monitor their online activities, bringing into the classrooms the kind of surveillance tool widely used by law enforcement. In 2021, schools and colleges in the United States spent an estimated $3.1 billion with a B on security products and services compared with $2.7 million in 2017. Quote, there can be a tendency to grab the latest technology and make it appear that you are doing something really protective and innovative, said Brian Casey, the technology director at Stevens Point Area Public School District in Wisconsin. We really have to take a step back and look at it and say, what benefit are we getting out of this and what's the cost? Much of this tech serves the function of a distraction, said Chris Harris, the policy director for the Austin Justice Coalition in Texas. Wesley Watts, a superintendent in West Baton Rouge, Louisiana, says that creating supportive school culture was more important for safety than security technology. Even so, certain tools may give schools an extra layer of security, he said. His district recently began using a video analysis from a startup called Zero Eyes that scans school camera feeds looking for guns. The Zero Eyes service can cost $5,000 per month for a single high school with 200 cameras. Watts has those in service across 250 school cameras. He said the cost was worth it. The spring, after an uptick in the number of guns confiscated from students, Charlotte Mecklenburg schools introduced a different security system, a walk-through weapon scanner that cost $5 million for 52 scanners at 21 high schools. So the system is trained to recognize magnetic fields around guns and other concealed weapons. No stopping is required, no emptying pockets or removing bags. However, common student items have routinely set off the scanner, such as laptops, umbrellas, 3-ring binders, spiral-bound notebooks, and metal water bottles. Then in February 2021, the Alert Point system sent false alarms district-wide, leading to lockdowns at all Cobb County schools. A few weeks later, they announced that hackers had deliberately set off false alerts.
Okay, so
I know that was a lot.
Definitely a lot. So first of all, I just wanted to ask, are the schools that have these high-tech security systems, are they in nicer parts?
I don't know. I did not look into that, but this was seems more nationwide because we pulled
Okay.
schools from Louisiana, Wisconsin, Texas, all over. This was a accumulation of several school districts.
Because my question is, of course, you never know which school has someone that is thinking about shooting up their school, but it seems like most of the time it is in lower income areas or around the borders or places where a community isn't as supported. And when I went to public schools, the tax money that we paid in from the neighborhoods,
Right.
those get funded for the school.
Correct.
So who's paying all the the $5 million?
Oh, these are public schools, by the way. So this comes from the taxpayers' money and from the federal government through grants and Pels.
So obviously it seems like schools that are more well off or in nicer parts of the area are going to get these high-tech security systems.
Whoever can get the grant is my notion. Regardless of the matter, schools are spending and dumping loads of money into technology that I showed examples that can be flawed. How do you feel if you went to school and you had to walk through what is airport security for class?
It's kind of terrifying because for a lot of people, school is that one place where they can be themselves and indulge in their extracurriculars, clubs, and be just kids. It seems like when you're walking by, there are signs where it's like, oh, smile, you're on camera. And I feel like you become so vulnerable and you're on high alert 24/7 while you're at school.
But it's for safety. What do you think?
I feel like it can be a double-edged sword for sure. Just because, yeah, it's a level of security, but it's also like anxiety ridden that like, oh, you're being watched all the time. Like, what if I do something wrong or I move a different way? Like, what if I get in trouble even though I'm not doing anything?
There was an example in here that I didn't read out loud, but there was one where the system actually worked and it identified a weapon. And when district staff, not officers, district staff confronted that person, it found out it was just a plastic airsoft rifle. But they said the school system was worth it because they didn't have to call law enforcement.
But then why did that kid have that in the first place? I feel like if schools created a more community based school and area, then that would eliminate that problem of like, oh, I feel the need to bring a plastic gun to school.
Oh,
or
he
like,
was just, this is a
why?
neighborhood school. So this kid he wasn't on school grounds. He was just walking on the edges of school because it's a neighborhood. So he's playing with friends, like airsoft guns as kids do. And the security camera picked it up.
I don't know. I feel like it would be kind of nice as a student to be like, okay, at least if a student or someone sitting next to me had a gun in their backpack, it could be found. But I think it should be more of
It cannot be found. The system does not detect concealed weapons, only if you're holding it out, at least in these cases.
But then what's the point? Because then suppose a kid pulls out a gun,
at that point, the cameras supposedly, their AI are trained to recognize that shape and distinct color, whatever it may be. Then they can alert certain authorities.
But then even with all the school shootings that we found, like for example, the Uvalde one, police were on the scene and they were just waiting there
For an hour.
And the first thing that you're taught, whether it's CPR, whether it's EMS, whether it's paramedics, anything when it comes to law enforcement, even for cops, first thing you do is you assess the situation. You check your surroundings, you make sure that it is safe for you to go and enter, for you to save the person's life, whatever it is. But why did it take an hour? So I don't understand why, notifying the police, is that going to stop that shooter from pulling the trigger?
It's funny that you bring that up. According to the federal government, the actual acronym or the steps that you should take, kind of like when they showed us those videos in history class when like the nuclear war was going on and it was just like, it was like duck and cover. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so apparently for school shootings, it's supposed to be like run, hide, and then fight. something like that. That's kind of the gist of it. Nowhere in there. Oh well, first of all, these schools too, even when these alerts go off, they're trained to go to a classroom, go to anywhere safe with no windows, crouch and hide. The problem with that is what you just said. There's no assessment of the situation. Nobody knows what's going on. So you're not looking at the situation. You're not looking around. You're not figuring out. You're literally just in panic mode. And all you do is, I better hide. And what better way for a shooter to hit you than a literal sitting duck?
Yeah.
So I think the technology, I think I agree with, I believe Chris said it in the article, but it's one big distraction. What's technology going to do for us, or at least these kids? Because I think about that. And I'm like, I'm sending my kid to like, I don't know, like a lockdown thing.
Yeah, like every day.
Yeah, it's like he's got to go through security scanners. He's being watched 24. Not that we aren't anyway, but you know, he's going to school. There's cameras on him watching his every movement, tracking everything that the CIA and the FBI use. It's the same exact technology. So why is it that my kid's going to go learn what 2 + 2 equals, but the security to keep him safe is that? I don't get it, because even though you alert officers, it's the same thing you said. That officer and they're hiding something, first of all, which is a totally different tangent, but there's no weapons on school. Like, how long is it going to take for a cop to show up to a school? 10 minutes, 5 minutes? A bullet comes out very fast and repeatedly very, very fast.
Yeah.
So why isn't the school resource officer that we have here in Arizona, I don't know if other schools have it, why don't they get their own set of weapons and defense systems? They're already there.
But I think that also brings up another good point of faulty use of weapons, because I know at my high school we had an SRO, sometimes even two, and sometimes there would be viral clips. I don't know. I don't remember actually, because we were never educated on it. They were just there. We never really approached them. They never really interfered.
Yeah.
But there would be clips where some kid would just be like goofing off and an officer would tase them. And it was like unlawful. And it was just like this whole thing. And then some people made it about race and things like that.
Damn, that's wild.
So it's such a touchy subject because everything can be misconstrued.
Right.
Construed in a different way. I will say, though, in India, I haven't been there in a long time, but last time I went, in the malls, they actually have what's it called?
Metal detector?
Metal detectors. And so every time you walk into a mall, you have to put all your stuff out of your pocket like you do at stadiums. You have to walk through it.
Whoa.
And I have never really heard of a shooting in a mall or anything wrong. You know, we don't really have a lot of cops in the mall there. Everything was fine. So I don't even think there were a bunch of like high-tech security cameras, you know. But I think having it at a school is just wrong place, wrong time, especially for little like kindergartners. Imagine you have to go through that every day. It kind of just feels like a prison cell almost.
Yeah, I don't know if they're that young, but primarily the article focused on junior high and high school students. But even, I don't know, how old are you when you're 10, 12? Because that's some of the kids gave some interview. They were like 10, 12. Elementary school? Really? So. No, that's too young.
School, middle school. But then a lot of schools, they're
It's
connected.
a 10, 12-year-old that's walking through security all by themselves. And they're like literally, the tip in the video was to like hold laptops up over your head so it doesn't trip the system. Awful. And I'm like, why are you doing this in the first place? I'm like, what is that going to do? Because the problem, like every school shooting, it wasn't the student on campus. They came off campus and then breached the headquarters. They breached the door system.
You know, that idea, that picture in my head, it just brought so much fear because it feels like a lot of things that are happening right now, and not just with school shootings and all of this. It feels like the government now more than ever is just trying to put fear as this controlling thing so that, oh, we're scared to send kids to school. We should abide to this. We should do this. And it's just like their way of trying to control not only adults and parents, but the kids.
Oh, they're making kids stupid. They're making us stupid. And you know what happens when we're stupid? We have to rely on the government all the time for everything.
We can't think for ourselves.
Nope.
We become this clockwork orange, this sheep that just follows the government around.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sad because it's kids, and although we don't have kids, it's still sad to see like, hey, I'm sure you and I can remember what being a kid was like, growing up, having fun, playing with friends, and not a care in the world. And now all these kids have to know, hey, if you hear this, a code red alert, it's time for you to hide because it's an active shooter situation. Like, that's terrifying. For a kid, they don't know any better. So where are these adults that should be trained to take down criminals like this? Because let's be honest, no matter how many laws you pass, criminals will always break them. That's why they're called criminals.
Yeah.
They're criminals because they break the law. So I just don't get why we keep advocating for all these laws to restrict. And I'm like, that's not going to do anything. They're just finding more ways to get around it.
Yeah, they're just trying to place fear and use that as a control tactic.
Yeah, it sucks that all of our taxpayer money is being spent that way because it's not the solution. We're like literally making schools into a lockdown. Fences everywhere, electric fence, whatever. Like, what else do you need to do? And all I can think about is if you really want to protect school, it's like those cartoons you used to watch when it's like they hit a button, like literally like a metal tent just comes all the way over the school.
Oh my God. Everything, the windows
get
barded with like
like
metal
that
or something.
Yeah.
So my question to you, because I know a lot of people have thought about making this a law or a bill for school.
Yeah.
Is having teachers armed.
Not a chance. Because I've seen some of my teachers growing up. No offense if my teachers hear this. I wouldn't trust them with a friggin' knife or like a stack of papers. What are they going to do with a gun? Like, honestly, what are they going to do with a gun? I don't think we should spend money for them to have a gun. What are they going to do? Like, are they really going to defend 30 students that aren't even theirs? Yes, some teachers end up like loving their students very much by the end of the year because they spend all that time together. But come on. There's a school resource officer on campus for a reason. There's school security on school for a reason, not just to break up fights, not just to do all this stuff. But I'm like, hey, if they're there and this is what they do, they should be trained in order to combat a situation like this. We can't control other people that want to break laws and do heinous crimes like this. But what we can do is control the people that are meant to protect the good people from those types of evil.
Yeah.
That's their training. And the Uvalde situation made me so mad. Out of all those 19 officers that stood in the hallway for an hour because they wanted keys and the commanding officer didn't want to give them the go-ahead. Dude. And out of those 19 officers, not a single one of them, I think, were men at all. They waited for a signal when they can actively hear shots going off on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
Not a single one stood up and said, fuck it, I'm going in there. And they just stood there and waited for an hour because he couldn't find keys to open the door. Yet that door wasn't even locked. They literally could have just twisted and opened it.
I feel like instead of spending all this money in high-tech things that taxpayers are basically buying for, I think that it should be more, the power should be in the community more. Like,
agreed.
Parents should take more control of their kids' education, what they're doing, not overbearing, but they should be proactive and present in kids' lives.
Of course.
I think, too, like, for the officers, they need better training. I know when I was growing up, my high school was backed against a mountain.
Yeah.
So in 2017, when all these school shootings became really a big problem, we were so terrified. Like, if we run out the window or the door, there could be someone on the mountain shooting down. So we're kind of like...
Honest to God, that's the best line of sight. You have no one behind you. Like, you're backed up to the wall and you're looking down. That's the perfect line of sight.
Our officer on the campus couldn't really even help us or educate the kids or anything. And it's just this lack of education that I feel like the government is trying to impose. They're just like, hey, follow this law. We're just going to do this without your consent.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have to follow it no matter what. We're not going to tell you what it is, what to do, how to think for yourself. You just follow these steps. And that should change.
Mm-hmm. We can't change the government as easily as we can change how we change in the community. Being active on the school board, you know, volunteering, because my mom volunteered when I was a kid all the time, you know, grading papers, just being there in the classroom. I thought that was so weird at the time, but now I get it. She was doing her part, and probably I will do the same. But yeah, what a waste of money, in my opinion. Some stuff is good. I will say some stuff is good. Like better cameras to identify. So if you are a school resource officer seeing this, yeah, you should be able to have that. But come on, do we really need metal detectors?
Yeah, I just think community police stations should have better protocol for things like that, especially because it's such a widespread issue.
Yeah.
And just having set guidelines in place and just teaching the police officers like, hey, just common sense.
Yeah.
And how to react quickly in situations like that.
Yeah. There's no easy answer, but I think it's safe to say that pouring millions into all these little knick-knack gadgets is just not a good use of funds, in my opinion. Anyway, what you got? Let's move on, huh?
Well, mine is a heavy hitter as well. As we know, so I'll give some backstory. There's a lot of things going on with abortion right now. Roe v. Wade was overturned constitutionally, but it's a lot of states are given back that power and they get to decide, right?
Right.
So the article I have is a GOP congresswoman said the end of Roe is a historic victory for white life. So on Saturday, Trump had a rally, and he had a Republican congresswoman from Illinois, Mary Miller, give a speech. And she said, on behalf of the MAGA patriots in America, she wanted to thank Trump for the historic victory for white life in the Supreme Court. And then she started clapping. And
is that right?
So in that moment, so I watched the video, it's on Twitter. And in that moment, after she said that, she just started clapping and moved on. But then later on, when she was called out for it, she had her campaign manager say that she misspoke. She very clearly meant to say victory for right to life during her remarks. That was her campaign spokesperson that said that, and said that it was a moment of mishap and stumble. But during that rally, she also quoted Hitler.
Jesus.
She said, Hitler was right on one thing. He said, whoever has the youth has the future. And so she also apologized about that. And she was basically saying that she shouldn't have said that, and that the media is distorting what she's saying, and that she meant to say that whoever is suggesting this is saying that defending all life is disgusting. So, it is very interesting to hear that even though she said it in her speech, she didn't even once correct it.
White life, right to life.
I feel like it's very hard to...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I'm not trying to defend that, but in a rally, like you're screaming, you're yelling. I don't know if it like slips out by accident, you just didn't catch it, or if she's reading off like a prompter. But either way, I don't know. I'll give her the benefit of the doubt that okay, maybe she did mean right to life, but then threw that Hitler one, and that kind of threw me off. I'm like, okay, maybe she did mean to say that.
I don't think I would give her the benefit of the doubt, honestly, because if you say that, you've given speeches, I've given speeches in front of thousands of people. If you make a mistake, you correct it, especially as a congresswoman.
Yeah.
Everything you say can be twisted in such
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how these political people give speeches and all. So that's why, like, okay, maybe. But then you threw in the hate list thing. Okay, she definitely has something off.
Yeah, so I feel like it's kind of those things where you know when you're drunk you say your subconscious thoughts
Oh, jeez.
and they're
Yeah.
actually like your reality, but you're too
Yeah.
afraid to say it when you're conscious. I feel like it's her unconscious bias coming out. It's
God,
such
that sounds terrible.
I was thinking more about it, you know,
Yeah.
the what would she say? Victory for white life, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a cynical cycle, this whole abortion thing, because obviously people can still get abortions in other states.
Yes.
But it costs money and time to travel
course.
to the other state, and it costs a lot of money to get abortion. So this victory for white life, obviously the statistics say that a lot of the women that are white that get abortions, they're wealthier, they have a lot more resources, and all these people of color, all these poor people in underserved communities that get abortions, they have to do it unsafely. And sometimes they die, or they have to go through with the labor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of this cynical cycle where it kind of seems like a victory for white life.
I see where you're going with that. My viewpoint on this is I do think with them overturning it, giving the power back to the states to decide, it's like the federal court saying, like, that's off our hands. That's not, we, like, per the Constitution, your states have the right to make their own laws. They can govern their own people. I'm like, okay, cool. But on this topic, I don't think that a government body should tell women specifically in this case what to do with their body. And this is a very touchy subject because I have a penis. But
That's good to know.
just to make sure everyone knows out there, I'm a man. But there's so many different angles that are being played, and I'm not really sure, you know, what the angle is, right? I mean, one, I think, first of all, this dropping right now, one huge distraction from our already falling apart society. But on that topic, the other side of an abortion is, I know I told you earlier this week that I read an article that a clinic does about, I think it was like 150 abortions a month on average. So if you think about it, and this is when I asked you, a fetus weighs about, you know, at 15 weeks, 9 to 11 ounces.
Mm-hmm.
Do the math on that. It was about 65 pounds of, what did you call it?
Organic matter.
Organic matter.
That's the term.
Organic matter that gets disposed. And how that gets disposed is very, it's very, what do you call it? It's not touchy, but it's very hidden. No one really talks about what happens after the abortion, what these techs do with the fetus that has now been aborted. Like, it's very inhumane for another human to literally, like, process this, because it's not like it just goes to a dumpster. Like, this is organic matter that has to get processed, and you know, there's a lot of theories out there. I can't prove it yet for myself, but that some of these parts, I will say, get sold on the black market because they're funding some type of research, or they possess, I think it's stem cells or something like that, if a fetus is viable enough to do like extra research or cure certain things on the black market. But that's after the fact, right? During the abortion, it's very, you know, I don't know what would bring a couple or a woman herself to make that decision. One, like, that's a very,
to have an abortion.
yeah, like, I feel like that's a very tough thing to come to terms. That's not just like, oh, I'm gonna have an abortion today. Like, I don't think that it's a very easy decision to make. So the fact that they're going through this emotional roller coaster to terminate a pregnancy like that, and then to be met with such big red tape from the government and a high dollar cost. I just think that makes living very difficult in general.
Yeah, I think a lot of these women that do have abortions, they are educated in their decision. You know, oftentimes,
But it doesn't make it easier.
no, 100% it does not. And even when women have miscarriages, it's still a tough thing, but oftentimes women can't fully.
Let me stop you right there real quick. If a woman has a miscarriage, is that considered an abortion after the fact?
I don't think so, because an abortion, I believe, is you yourself are doing it,
Okay.
or you're seeking medical resources to end the baby or end the
Pregnancy.
pregnancy. But I think miscarriage is when like external factors or just your body terminates the pregnancy itself. So, but I don't know 100% for sure. So,
just curious.
but oftentimes women can't fully carry a baby to term. There are complications come up. A lot of genetic mutations can happen. And, you know, we've talked about it. Like, if our kid has a lot of mutations, I don't know if I could have that kid suffer.
It's quality of life at that point. And, you know, there's a lot of different things that's why they call it the miracle of life. Like, there's a lot of things that happens within a pregnancy that it is like a true miracle, honestly. Like, sciences, or humans, I guess, are friggin' awesome. But there's, like you said, there's mutations that come with it. You know, there's deformities that can happen. There's so many different factors. And to bring a kid into the world, I guess we'll call it a soul into the world, where they have to suffer their whole life, like, is that, I don't know. I just feel like,
see my kid doing that. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
It would just be a lot of burden. But it's also a lot of financial reasons too. A lot of these mothers, they're single mothers, their boyfriend, partner, whatever left them, and they can't have a kid by themselves. No one talks about all the kids in the foster system. Why are we not focusing on that? Why are we not giving them a better chance at succeeding at life when they're already in this world and struggling just because their parents could not, for whatever reason, raise them?
Yeah. I get, like, you know, life is life. And as soon as, like, a fetus is at a developmental stage, like, like, it's kind of sad to see, because they have, like, a face that's been developed. But you're right. Like, there's kids in the foster system that needs our attention too, because they're just floating around the system, to where they could have been babies of a rape situation, an incest situation, a single mom that just could not afford or not in the mental capacity to raise a kid. So she was hoping that someone else could do it. But then that inundates our system, our foster care system, our adoption system, because you know, who's going to raise a kid? How many people out there are really wanting to go adopt? Truly. On the ratio.
Especially when a lot of those foster kids, they have a lot of medical needs.
Right. That's sad to say, but they just weren't wanted. And now put that burden on, you know, I still think it just goes back to just like, listen, don't fuck with my body. Just let me do what I got to do. Like, that's their decision to make. I mean, of course, I think there should be like a threshold. Like, listen, you're about to bust. You cannot have an abortion right now. Like, I don't think unless it's, what is called
medically necessary.
Thank you. Yeah. Like, it's medical necessary. And it's a risk to the mother's life. Like, you can't just all of a sudden you're about to give birth. Like, no, I don't want it.
I just feel like banning abortion is not going to reduce abortions.
No, people are just, like I said, people are just either going to find better ways to do it, or not better, I guess, find ways just to do it. And they're a person
risking their life.
Yeah, a person that's desperate, they're going to, Google some stuff. And I bet you birth control and contraceptives are about to go through the roof right now. And where does that come from? The pharmaceuticals.
Big pharma. Conspiracy theory. Don't even get me started on that. I have so many theories about like cancer treatments, all of that stuff related to big pharma. But it is so disappointing to see that guns seem to have more authority over women. because it feels like a woman is more regulated by the government than guns are. And I cannot wrap my head around that, because
Even honestly, like, sitting here as a man too, like, I don't understand that. I just don't understand why the government has to say something about like abortion rights for women. I just kind of want to flip the page and think like, hey, how about that man? Like, where's that man that did that? What happened there? Like, if it's a rape victim, what happened to that man? He went to jail for what, like a few days in probation and then walked off. How about in cases of incest? How about cases of like abuse? Where's all that? Where's the man in this situation? Like, are we avoiding something completely different? I'm okay, honestly. Like, I'm okay if it's an abortion for medical purposes. Like, I understand there's certain things that puts a mother's life at risk. I'm like, okay, like, listen, that's probably a hard decision that I can never figure out. How I can never make that decision. I just don't know what it takes to make that decision. But to save your life, I mean, I just feel like that's fine. That's a very rational decision, and there's no winning in that situation. It's you're literally trying to figure out whose life you want to save, and that's not easy. I just don't get why. I don't get why we can't just leave people alone.
I feel like
right? Like, just why?
I feel like the government is kind of using this as a cop-out answer for bigger issues that are at play. We have been fighting for years and years for better healthcare, better regulation, better education.
For women in general, or
for
just everybody?
Healthcare in general.
Okay.
But if you look at just for women health in general, why do people have to go to Planned Parenthood, where sometimes it's not the greatest of care? Why can't
Well, not even that. They're met with protesters at the door that like shame them for trying to find care.
It's so awful. Even at normal hospitals, they have protesters.
Yeah.
And
which is fine. Public space. It's the right to protest, right?
I do understand that. As long as you don't come in front of my car, I'm fine with that. But it is just like this guilt resounding thing that the government is trying to push, because they're trying to overturn one constitutional law that happened, whereas they're not trying to implement these multiple mini steps that they can do to create a better future, to get better healthcare, to create a better society. I just think they are not trying to educate us at all. They're just saying, hey, you can't do this, point blank.
Yeah, and there's no solution afterwards. It's just, well, I mean, at the time this comes out too, what's around the corner? November is coming. You have your midterm elections are coming. People are just plummeting chaos to maybe fix it and seem like the hero for the vote.
Yeah, find a savior,
Yeah, let me make the problem. I'll fix it, and then you can call me like a huge hero. I fixed the own problem that I made.
Is Biden running for re-election?
This isn't the presidential election. This is...
Oh, right, But I feel like because
But there has been questions about that. I don't think he will.
Yeah.
But his own party will not let him. Guaranteed.
Yikes. It's back to just women's health.
Yeah.
It is kind of scary. I will say, you brought up the black market. I 100% think that there are some shady things going on.
Stuff that we just don't know and probably never will.
I was listening to a podcast or reading an article, I forgot where, but there was this medical examiner who, what they do is after body is given to them, they do an autopsy, they figure out like cause of death, or just like for medical purposes, research, things like that. So he was telling his story, like every day when he comes to work, he just puts his headphones in, listens to a podcast, music, and just does his job. Very humane job.
Yeah.
But one time he opened it and it was a fetus almost at full term. Oh. And it just came out of the bag. And he said after that, he could not return to his job again. And it's just, it is just awful, the things that what happens after abortion that people don't even realize. And I feel like more of that's going to happen if women are forced to have unsafe abortions.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those things that like you tell someone they can't do it, then they're just going to try and do it. Like, I don't know why all this attention. I don't know if women are this cynical, but I don't think all the women out there are having like unprotected sex, and if they happen to get pregnant, their decision like, oh yeah, I'll go abort it. I don't think that's the mindset, because that's,
I would hope not.
yeah, that's kind of nuts. But like, the abortion is a procedure that's necessary for, you know, saving the mother's life in rape or incest. Like,
But even without that, if you put that aside, medical necessities aside, if a woman wants to have an abortion, I think she can fully make the decision by herself. It comes back to that patient autonomy. You know, I'm in healthcare. I want to be a doctor. I'm studying to be a doctor. So for me, patient autonomy is one of the biggest things. And it comes back to that ethical decision making, that ethical values that doctors have. If I'm an OB-GYN in the future, I take care of women's health.
Right.
And some Roe v. Wade is still overturned, especially in Arizona, it's banned. But someone comes to me and they're like, I just don't want to have a baby. And it's just this patient's autonomy that they can't even have control over what they want to do. But they can go out and buy a gun and do whatever they want with it. It's so weird to think about.
It's almost like it's legal murder in a way. Like, I feel like if you kind of reframe abortion, like, it's almost like legal murder, because you are taking a life in a way, whether it can, you know, a baby can think for itself and stuff, like, it's still a life. But I think I just kind of agree with you. If we just stop bringing attention to it, I just feel like most women out there, I don't know, this is maybe my belief in society is more good than bad, but like, they're not actively seeking to get abortions. They're going to try to figure it out the best that they can. But I think it's just nice to know that they have an option to take this step if they so decide, which I'm like, okay, cool. That's your body. You do what you want. And truth be told, it's not going to affect my life in any way.
And I think it affects a lot more than just the woman that's carrying that baby. It affects the partner, it affects the family, the community, everyone around that person.
Of course.
And I just feel like you should have the option, like you said, to do what you need to do. And it comes back to just educating the public.
Yeah.
We should have more services that give these resources to people, especially in underserved populations and people of color, so that when people make that option to have an abortion, they are educated on what can go wrong and what can go right.
Agreed. I just think same thing. Government, just keep your hands off. This is not something you can be a part of.
I do definitely agree with you that it seems like everything that's going on is a big distraction from something. And it's kind of terrifying. There are just so many...
We're all fighting about abortion and everything, right? Suddenly no one gives a shit that gas prices doubled in the last month, or your groceries are suddenly way more expensive. Tampons are flying off the shelf for some weird reason. You have things constantly out of stock. But, you know, let's all get in the street and completely riot about this. Like, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying we have more important situations at hand. Like, you're not going to be able to have an abortion because society will have collapsed, or you literally cannot afford to live. So I don't think your baby making is on the top priority. It's probably surviving. Yeah.
I just feel like it's very scary. Very scary indeed.
Well, especially because we're 21, 25. This is the world that we're inheriting, and we're watching these figures make decisions for us. And we're like, I think most of society is like, no, we don't want that. Who said this? And it's this loud 1%ers that are just going nuts.
It's very much a cop-out answer to trying to fix a solution when there are way better solutions out there. And it's weird because everything that's happening with guns, with abortion, with gas prices, with the media, you know, with trying to control consumers, it seems like communism 101, you know?
Yes. I'm glad you see that. That's another episode for another time. But yes, my parents came from a communist regime. Like, they see this happening and they're like, why is America being so spoiled? Like, we're acting like spoiled children. And I'm like, do you guys not see this is communism coming back?
Yeah,
No one ever, like, nothing ever good happened from communism. Nothing. More death happens in communism than you think. And they're like, oh, no, we can't hear it. Yeah, it's because the state media shuts it off from the world.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on behind closed borders. There's a reason my parents came here on a boat. They literally floated the damn ocean to come here. And hence why I'm here. So for everyone's like, oh, yeah, communism is good. Like, we had government. No. This is America.
And you bring up good points. I think now more than ever, you all listening out there should be more educated, should go out there and try to find news from different outlets, educate your friends, educate the community, find your own truth in all of the noise.
Yes. You know, on an example too, like even on your abortion thing, everyone's like freaking out. Abortion's illegal now. I'm like, no, abortion's not illegal. They just gave the power back to the states. Now, the states may have made it illegal, but there's very different stipulations. Like, read the article, get educated, and stop falling into these headlines that are forcing you to just repost. And that further distracts you from the true problem. Like, if you read about it, it's really not that big of a deal. When you think about the grand picture, like, it's not fully legal. There's still things to do where you can do what you got to do. Read between the lines.
Yeah, you can still get oral contraceptives. You can still find other ways to make your decision. So
practice safe sex. Pull out.
Abstinence.
Or do it in the butt.
Okay, well, I think that's a good way to end this segment.
Oh, man. Take us out.
Well, thank you all for listening. We see some new listeners, so that's awesome to see our community growing. We love it. Well, from Albert and I, we hope that you enjoyed this episode and feel more educated. Keep going out there and having those everyday conversations. We love you guys. Bye.
See you guys. Talk to you guys later.